Hello, today we're going to take a quick look, hopefully, at Fedora 15's beta. Sorry this is taking so long to get around to. I was having some issues getting FFmpeg to work correctly. Hopefully I do have it working correctly now, so let's go ahead and get started. The last time we looked at Fedora 15, the version of GNOME 3 that came with it, the version of GNOME Shell, was the pre-beta, so everything was not quite finalized yet. The version that is included now with the beta of Fedora is GNOME Shell Final. So this is actually the full 3 version. We'll get into what's new about that here in just a few minutes, but first let's talk about the other changes. I'll go ahead and pull up the release notes here. You see we've got changes for desktop users. Basically, for desktop users, all of the desktop environments have been updated. I mentioned that in the alpha. We're going to have GNOME 3 or GNOME Shell, whichever one you choose to use in this version on the GNOME side. We're going to have the newest version of KDE on the KDE side. Let me just go ahead and click over to it. You see here we've got KDE's 4.6 software compilation, so that may not be the absolute latest and greatest one, but it is pretty close. I mean, 4.6 being a major and a minor version, that is the newest one available. Having a subversion that's not quite there yet, it'll probably be an update in the very near future. As well, there's a version of Sugar, there's a newest version of XFCE, version 4.8. So as a desktop user, if you want to get the latest and greatest, and probably pretty close to the vanilla plain Jane packages, Fedora will be a great thing to look at when Fedora 15 does become final. For system administrators, we do have some updates there as well. We of course have kernel 2.6.38, which has some significant performance improvements across the board. However, one of the biggest changes, and something someone has asked me to talk about, can't remember exactly who, is they're moving away from the udev, the upstart, the sysv init, all of these different ways that you used to start services and daemons up on your system, to systemd. And basically, if I go over to the systemd page, we can get a quick look at what's new about that, what's changed. Makes it a little bit easier to interact with. It's got better documentation. I think from what I've read, it's just a better API to use in general. Here we go. To view what system services are available, you run systemctl. Here's how you would stop, start, or enable, disable. System control, start, service, system control, stop service, restart service, status service, enable, disable. Very, very easy to get into using. And you can also change the run level, so at what point it starts up when the system is starting up. You can remove the default targets. I mean, there's a bunch of things you can do here, so if you'd like to learn more about systemd and how it will be beneficial to you, here is the link, fedoraproject.org/wiki/systemd. I will try to make sure to put that in the source code below the video. But the big thing to talk about, the one huge change that does come with Fedora 15 is GNOME 3 or GNOME Shell. You'll see here we're looking at the default GNOME Shell desktop. Right-click on the desktop doesn't seem to do anything. Right-click on the panel doesn't really do anything. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the Activities menu. If I go ahead and mouse over that or click on it, it will bring up, oh, look, this is my screencasting. Having a bit of an issue with that, but it does appear to still be capturing, so I'm not complaining. On the left-hand side, we have our favorites, which I have modified a little bit just because I've been using this. This is actually my everyday laptop. Up here at the top, we have our applications list. If I click on that, it should show the list of installed applications. A lot of the standard applications you'd come to expect with Fedora, except we do have LibreOffice installed by default now. I believe, if I remember correctly, this is version 3.3.2. I'll go ahead and open it just to be sure. There we go. Didn't take that long, surprisingly enough. About LibreOffice says 3.3.2, so we are using I believe the latest and greatest version. There is 3.4 beta available now, if I remember correctly. They will probably end up moving to that. But let's see what else under applications, just anything that jumps out at me. I do have some things on here installed that are not default, such as Kdenlive over here, and I have the GNOME Tweak tool. I'll get into that and extensions here in just a minute. But basically the biggest change with GNOME 3 since the pre-beta that we looked at before when Fedora 15 was in the alpha stage, the window management. There used to be buttons along the bottom that you would select what window you're using. Now instead you've got a bar on the side that pops out. You see we've got 2 desktops at the moment. If I were to open another application, let's just open up Chrome because that'll be pretty quick to get open. Alright, at this point I come back to my activities window. You see I've got 2 tabs open. If I drag this one over to the second window, it moves it to the second workspace, and then there's a third one now created automatically. If I move this item from the second to the third, it deletes the second one, creates the third one again, moves everything up, shifts it all. If I move this window in the first workspace down to the third, it deletes the first and moves everything up. It's just automatic workspace management, very easy to manage at this point, and it doesn't give you any more than you actually need. So kinda handy in my opinion, but at the same time it can also be kind of obnoxious. I don't know why you would necessarily need 15 desktops, but if you did want that many, not being able to get them very easily over here could be obnoxious. Just like we mentioned the last time, you can drag between them over here, but instead of dragging from left to right now, you drag top to bottom, just like you're scrolling across pages on a mobile device. So that's kind of interesting, but not something I've found myself using very much. The other thing I've noticed over here on the side, this favorites bar, it would be very handy to have it out on the desktop, and that is possible with what's called an extension. There are extensions you can install on top of Fedora. One of them adds a launcher bar like this over to the right-hand side of the main screen. Through a little bit of clever editing, you can actually move this to the left-hand side. You can put it on the top or the bottom. It would just take changing some CSS and some JavaScript code. I've done it on my desktop, and I ended up moving it back. You know, it's just one of those things I didn't want to risk messing it up, because if you make the wrong change, you can actually break the desktop and have a hard time getting back in. But that pretty much does cover the activities window. You see here up in the top middle, we do still have the clock. If you click on that, you can change date and time settings. You can look in your calendar. One thing that is extremely handy is if you come in here and unlock this, you can actually set the network time here. However, you'll notice there we've only got the day and we've got the time in 24-hour mode, which I turn off generally. That's kind of obnoxious. We'll get back to that in a second too. Over here on the side, we've got all of the system tray icons that are not really easily removable, but again, with an extension, you can remove them. The accessibility one, for example, I don't generally have a reason to use. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. There's a way to make an extension to remove that or not load that. So it's very nice that you can customize it. It's just not terribly easy to customize. Additionally, under the status menu up here, you see we don't have a power button. That was removed. I think it was available in the Fedora 15 alpha using the GNOME pre-beta, but now you have to hold the Alt key to get it to say power off. However, there's another extension that's available that does do all of this for you. You can very easily get that running again and have a power off button as well as the suspend button. Now, the one thing I would mention, if you are going to be using a GNOME 3 GNOME Shell system, one thing you might want to look into is the GNOME tweak tool. I talked about this before. That's what I'm going to come back to with this. I'll go ahead and open that now. It's in most repositories. I couldn't find it in the default Ubuntu 11.04 repositories. Not really surprised there. However, on Fedora, it was in the default repos. On Arch, it's of course in the repos. So shouldn't be difficult to get. When I open this up, you see File Manager. I can say have the File Manager handle the desktop. So after I restart GNOME Shell now, I will actually have desktop interactivity again, where I can have icons and I can right-click and do stuff to the desktop. Very, very handy. Under Shell, you see we've got Show Date and Clock. Yes, please. Now I've got the date up here. Kind of handy. Arrangement of the buttons. I know a lot of people complained about having these buttons gone. If I click that and go to All, once I restart the shell, those buttons will show back up. If you've got a laptop and you don't want it to suspend when you close it, you can change that to blank the screen, tell it to shut down or hibernate or whatever you want to do. Same thing for AC power. If you install the extension about user themes, like I've mentioned, there are a bunch of extensions out there. There's a user theme extension that you can very easily switch what theme you're using here. You just have to download them. There are a lot of them available at DeviantArt. Let's see if I can go ahead and pull that up very quickly. And here we go. We are at halfleft.deviantart.com. You see he's got a GNOME Shell themes box. If we just go ahead and hit Browse Folder, we should be able to look at all of his themes he's got available. Gaia, Orta, At Home, Smooth and Set, and DeviantArt. So these are actually fewer than I expected, but he did have a lot out there for previous versions. If you would like to try some of them out, definitely go check out his DeviantArt page. He's done an amazing job with a lot of these. You see it just different look and feel, different CSS styling, maybe some different fonts, things like that. You can also change icons. There is a lot more customizability than I once thought there was, and a lot of it is handled through this tweak tool. Like I said, the user theme extension. From within here, we can change the default fonts, the text size.
From within interface, we can change the GTK and icon themes. We can say that all menus must have buttons and all buttons must have icons. All menus must have icons and all buttons must have icons. Under Windows, you see we've got what we want to do whenever we double click on a title bar, when we middle click or right click on a title bar. So we do have that little bit of level of customizability, and of course the extensions framework should be expanded upon in the near future. I know they are planning on adding a Zeitgeist utility with the next version of GNOME Shell 3.2. That should make it a little bit easier to track the history of what you've been doing and maybe even clear the history of what you've been doing. But basically this is just a very quick, hopefully very quick look at Fedora 15's beta. I will be doing another look at Fedora 15 when it does go final. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.